Welcome in the headquarters of the genuine Italian vegetable tan leather consortium in Tuscany. Today we have here Mrs. Diane Becker, who is the director of didactic and training projects for the consortium, and Mr. Mario Bemer, who is a very famous Florentine bespoke shoemaker. And we thank you both for being here.
So any tanning process is basically to stop the putrefaction of skin and turn it into a durable substance. In the case of vegetable tanning, the agent that's used to bond with the collagen are the vegetable tannins that come from natural sources, rather than using a chemical reaction. So heavy metals, the mineral tanning, are the major industrial kinds of tanning. This is something that creates a different problem in terms of the whole process and its environmental impact. Veg tanning is a process that takes a lot of time. It's part of kind of a slow approach to product, in the same way that slow food is part of the culture here in Tuscany. Here in the Tuscan leather district is where I have my experience, and the major tannins that are used are quebracho, mimosa, and chestnut. They form, for only about 8%, a chemical bond with the animal collagen, and for the rest, the tannins enter into the skins by a very slow process of osmosis. This is what gives the leather this very round, warm hand. The other aspect that gives the quality to the leather comes from the natural fats that are used in the process. These are all non-petroleum based, and that the aspects of the leather, the characteristics, are built right into the tanning process. They're not given characteristics at the end for a finishing process, which is much more common in other types of tanning processes. Well, the largest part that are made here in Tuscany are bovine, but there is also buffalo, goat, sheep, depending. But since they're all quite small tanneries, they have the great flexibility that they can respond to a special request from the market. Well, aside from a use in heavy industrial context that can be used for belting, the major part of the product here in Tuscany goes to the fashion industry for footwear, for handbags, small leather goods, and also design objects. It's a production that requires attention, and so also a major part of the product goes to artisan craftsmen. These are products that all can be very personalized, both at the point of the maker and then at the end user. So it's an artifact that gains over time in aesthetic quality. More than negative, I would say, their characteristics. It's a material that changes, a material that that requires special care in the making. It's not something that is suitable for an industrial production where you have big changes in temperature. You have to enter into a dialogue with the material to be able to use it. And so it's not something that can be used indifferently. It's something that you have to pay attention in its use, but it also gives you many possibilities. So I would just say that it's something that requires a knowledge of the material you're using and to work with the material to bring out its best aspects. A veg tan leather has a rich tactile quality. It's reactive to light and to use, and so it changes over time. It's something that transforms and becomes more personal to the user. It's part of a philosophy of having objects that surround us, that are personal, that reflect us, and becomes unique. always the most sustainable object will be what you already have or what you will have for a long time. And this is something that veg tan leather is really a prime material for an object where you create a relationship over time. The members of the consortium follow a very strict protocol in terms of what can be used in the processing of the leathers. The skins all come from European meat markets, and the tannins come from renewable sources. The agents that are used for other parts of the process, such as the coloring or finishing at the end, are part of the normal supply chain for the tanning industry. But they're used in a way that the end product will qualify as strictly as metal-free. So no toxic agents are used in the process. All of the ingredients in the vegetable tanning process come from renewable sources, and they're organic in nature. Heavy metal tannings are, by definition, inorganic. In the Tuscan leather district, the whole process of the tanning is looked at as a holistic function. All along the production procedure, all of the waste products are turned into byproducts that have other use. So all of the parts that are taken from the skins in part of the tanning process are collected and turned into a material that's used in, as a fertilizer in agriculture here. The biggest impact in any tanning process would probably be the use of water. Here, there's a great investment in the community to be able to unite all of the domestic waters from the surrounding cities, to take them together with the industrial waters, purify that, and then send that into the tanneries to be used in the tanning process. This means that they can take much less water out of the water tables, so that the water in our water tables here are used first for domestic, for civil uses, and not for industrial uses. And this really has made a big difference in terms of water, which is probably the agent that has the highest level of pollution. The Veg Tan Consortium here in Tuscany has created a guarantee label. This is something that the tanners can give to the customers, which guarantees that all of the protocols of the Tuscan Veg Tan tanneries have been met in terms of quality, in terms of what goes into the process, in terms of labor, in terms of environmental impact. Through the database that this is connected to, the end consumer can go back through the maker to the tannery that has produced the leather. So that it's a process that's entirely transparent and traceable. This would be a way of communicating to the end customer what it is that's in your product, and would be, for me, the best way to guarantee that the veg tan leather that you are acquiring is something that meets all of the standards. There is the request to have a more responsible fashion production and more responsible consumption. More that we realize that the cost of fast and disposable fashion is something that cannot be maintained. So I think as consumers change and their attitude to what is of value changes, and as slow becomes more of a lifestyle choice, there's more of an appreciation of this essentially very old material. It is by definition a niche market. It's not something that can be used on vast industrial scale. It's something that requires time and attention and rapport between the maker and the object. So for the questions about veg tan leather, specifically related to bespoke footwear, I'd like to ask Mario Bemer for his opinion. So Mario, what would you say are the advantages of using veg tan leather?
Vantaggi sono prima di tutto che è un materiale completamente ecosostenibile, quindi diamo la possibilità a chi produce e a chi usa questo materiale di avere un prodotto completamente anallergico.
So the first and most important reason for using the veg tan leather is because it's a completely eco-sustainable material. And it's something that also will give the possibility of the maker and the end user to have an object that is non-allergic.
Questo chiaramente si traduce in una salute del piede, perché chiaramente l'organismo non avrà mai un contatto con materiali che non hanno appunto una derivazione dal vegetale e da appunto un apporto di chimica nel prodotto.
So this gives the possibility of creating an object for the end consumer where they never are risking to have contact with any kinds of toxic materials, and so essentially for the health of the wearer.
È anche un modo più piacevole per l'artigiano, per il realizzatore del prodotto, di avere un contatto appunto con materiali che rispondono in maniera diversa rispetto ai classici materiali a concia cromo, a concia chimica, perché è una pelle che rispecchia un po' le caratteristiche del nostro derma, della nostra pelle.
So it's a question also for the maker. It's a material that is much more pleasing to work with because of the way it responds, rather than materials that are made of other kinds of tanning processes. This has a reaction that's much closer to our own skin, and it's altogether tactilely a much more satisfying way to work with the leather.
È una pelle che vive, continua a vivere anche dopo aver realizzato il prodotto, anche se non viene utilizzato immediatamente o nel tempo, ha sempre una vita propria, si adatta più a quello che è l'ambiente, la temperatura, il clima, e quindi questa è una delle caratteristiche che la rendono unica rispetto al contesto di produzioni industriali.
Essentially, it's a living material. So whether or not the shoe is immediately used, it's something that responds to climate, to temperature change, and is very different from what could be just a standard industrialized product.
Quindi nella realizzazione di un bespoke non è che utilizziamo soltanto la parte estetica della scarpa, quindi quello che è il prodotto per realizzare una tomaia, ma anche tutti i componenti sono una concia vegetale. L'intersuola, la suola, il guardo, tutto quello che riguarda gli rinforzi puntati è solo un procedimento di concia vegetale.
So beyond what the materials that are used on the upper of the shoe, all of the structural parts, all the components of the sole, the welt, the intersole, the counter, the quarter, the heel grips are all made of natural veg tan leather.
In aggiunta, per continuare a produrre come dicevo, un materiale, un prodotto completamente organico, anche quello che è il filo e il collante, quindi la parte che in alcune parti della scarpa unisce i vari strati, è una colla vegetale, e il filo viene utilizzato sempre con una fibra vegetale, con cera o con pece per la sua realizzazione.
And in Mario's philosophy of shoemaking, even the thread and the glues are also of natural resources. So it's a natural glue and a natural fiber that's used in the stitching. Ci sono dei svantaggi?
Per il mio punto di vista sono minimali, cioè l'unico svantaggio per il concetto di costruire una scarpa è che la gamma dei colori della pelle utilizzata per realizzare la tomaia ha una gamma ridotta rispetto a prodotti realizzati con conce a cromo, aniline, eccetera.
So the only disadvantage that he finds is that the range of colors that are natural to veg tanning is by its nature, it's a spectrum that is much closer to the warm range, and with other tanning processes you have a much broader range of colors that can be used.
Anche questo però è più un problema di cultura da parte di molti clienti, di molti che usano il prodotto, perché questo piccolo svantaggio può essere molto compensato da quello che è l'utilizzo di cere o pigmenti naturali che appunto possono sopperire a questa diciamo mancanza.
It continues to change and becomes more personal as a shoe for the end user. It becomes even more of a personalized footwear.
Sì, una delle cose più evidenti che si vede appunto nel tempo è il classico tan, cioè la differenza di tono che assume la pelle in maniera del tutto naturale, quindi c'è un assorbimento di quello che è appunto lo stato di vita della calzatura in questo caso e il modo anche di utilizzo da parte del cliente, a prescindere da quelle che sono le manutenzioni specifiche della pelle.
So essentially the leather becomes more personalized to the end user. His bespoke shoe becomes even more personal because the leather changes over time depending upon his personal use, his or personal use. Are there specific ways to protect the shoe and to prolong its life?
Sì, generalmente è un prodotto che ha anche una manutenzione semplice perché ha una necessità di pulizia molto veloce e viene generalmente appunto protetta con, come dicevo prima, delle cere naturali. Oltretutto, essendo, come dicevo, una pelle sempre viva, ha anche una forma di protezione propria perché alla fine della lavorazione della concia l'ultimo passaggio che viene fatto a questa pelle è un ingrassaggio. L'ingrassaggio generalmente è sempre realizzato con il prodotto derivato dalla pelle stessa e quindi è un'ulteriore protezione che la pelle si dà.
Shoes that are made of veg tan leather require a certain amount of care. The cleaning process is quite simple, and then also it can be additionally to add the waxes and finishing that are used at the last stage of the tanning process can also be used on the finished object over time. So Mario has here his kit for maintaining the shoes, and he'll demonstrate a little bit of how the waxes can be used on, in this case, just a pullover of veg tan leather.
Quindi una semplice manutenzione, se la scarpa fosse appunto usata, basta una piccola pulizia superficiale per togliere quello che può essere una parte di sporcizia e poi con un semplice passaggio di, in questo caso, una cera.
So in terms of maintaining the footwear, simply brushing off any surface dust or dirt, and then a wax can be applied by hand to nourish the leather.
Questo è solo un esempio volante, ma subito si va a dare appunto supporto al fiore e si vede che immediatamente abbiamo una protezione e una lucentezza che viene poi ad aumentare automaticamente nel tempo. nei passaggi successivi basterà appunto un panno e quindi non è necessario un supporto di cera costante tutte le volte che viene usato la scarpa.
So in this case, using the wax finish on the leather and then by polishing it, the grain of the leather is enriched, and over time you don't need to add so many layers of the wax, of the finishing on it, but just by buffing it will bring these oils back up to the surface. And so it improves, gives depth to the color, and these are part of the changes that occur in a footwear made of veg tan leather that improves and increases the beauty of it over time. Why would a shoemaker choose veg tan leather over other tanning?
Principalmente per una risposta salutare all'utilizzo della scarpa, quindi usando tutto un prodotto con materiale vegetale, il beneficio al fisico è che abbiamo sempre un contatto anallergico e quelle che normalmente si formano all'interno della scarpa per l'uso, il calore eccetera di muffe o funghi qui sono praticamente inesistenti. Questo è molto importante.
So the first reason you would say is basically one that has to do with the health reason, because you have this natural material in contact with the body, and in the environment on the inside of a shoe, through the humidity and through contact with skin, naturally is very conducive to producing situations of bacteria and mold, and veg tan leather by its nature is a natural antifungal and antibacterial.
La prima cosa che notiamo in una scarpa di buona qualità con materiali organici, come in questo caso, è quello che è la sensazione sgradevole degli odori. In una scarpa costruita con un prodotto completamente di concia vegetale, gli odori sono inesistenti.
One of the most disagreeable aspects of footwear can be the odor, and when you have footwear that's been constructed out of all of these natural ingredients of the veg tan leather, that is never the problem.
La scarpa respira, il piede respira perché appunto il passaggio dell'aria, il passaggio del calore è sempre un passaggio naturale, non trovano barriere chimiche all'interno e all'esterno.
So it's a question of the shoe breathes and the foot breathes, and because there's no chemical barriers that prevent this natural exchange with the outside atmosphere.
La pelle vegetale è sempre stata considerata una pelle, per mio avviso erroneamente, meno elegante e quindi un utilizzo più, diciamo, casual rispetto allo standard delle produzioni industriali di livello fashion.
So one of the misconceptions about the use of veg tan leather has always been the idea that the product is more of a casual, rustic product rather than an elegant fashion footwear.
Come dicevo, secondo me appunto, questo dipende anche da chi realizza il prodotto, è possibile ovviare a questo, diciamo, inconveniente con dei sistemi appunto di finissaggio, di rifinitura appropriati.
But this really depends upon the maker. Veg tan leather also allows the maker to add and qualify the end product by different finishing techniques.
E questo è un vantaggio per cui dovremmo scegliere più pelle vegetale, perché ci dà un ampio spazio rispetto alle conce tradizionali chimiche con una personalizzazione che può variare dai tipi di rifinitura e di lavorazione appunto in concia. Quindi passiamo da una pelle completamente liscia a una pelle più rugosa, a una pelle volonata, e possiamo sulla stessa base avere una gamma molto ampia.
So an advantage for choosing vegetale leather as a bespoke maker over leathers that are produced by more traditional chemical tannings is that it allows the maker to personalize the leather by a whole series of different interventions, and giving a wider range for a more personalized end product. The creativity of the shoemaker has more possibility with vegetale leather.
Uno delle piccole caratteristiche, delle tante che ha, è il fatto che la pelle può assumere delle piccole, chiamiamole nemmeno cicatrici, dei piccoli segni che sono secondo me poi a lungo andare valorizzati perché dimostrano e raccontano il tempo e la vita della scarpa, quindi un modo anche che caratterizza di più nel tempo un prodotto.
So the fact that vegetale leather, you can see signs, he said, whether they seem to be scars or some kinds of marks on the leather, over time these become something that adds to the dimension of the leather and of the footwear, that can become something that recounts more of a story in the bespoke footwear that reflects the life of the owner, of the wearer, of the user.
E un altro grande vantaggio è che nel corso degli anni possiamo tranquillamente interagire sulla pelle con quelle che sono le manutenzioni dell'operatore, del calzolaio in questo caso, che danno veramente un ulteriore spazio di tempo importante, quelli che possono essere dei piccoli graffi, segni eccetera. Qui possiamo interagire. Su altri tipi di materiale rimangono come delle cicatrici che non possono essere riparate.
And over time there's the possibility to repair or to work with usage that shows up in the footwear that you can do with vegetale leather, as opposed to other tanning finishes that when a damage is there, it cannot be corrected in any way. The shoemaker in his art is able to really give life back to leathers that start with a vegetable tan base. The footwear itself can be practically regenerated by the knowing hands of a shoemaker. Well, thank you for letting us participate with you during your convention here in the Tuscan Leather District. We send you our greetings and hope that next year we might be together.